You've got two schools here, Ysgol Bron Isa and Ysgol Caerwen. One of them, it says, is large and in a rural area, and the other one is a small school in a town. Okay, and the one that's in the town, the small school, is situated where there's many, it says, traffic-free cycle routes. Now what you notice here is it doesn't tell you which school is which. It doesn't say which one is the large one and which one's the small one. And then it says all the pupils of year 7 to 10 were surveyed in both of these schools. They were asked the following questions. Do you cycle to school, yes or no? And if you answered no, would you like to cycle to school? Yes or no? The results were displayed in graphs as shown below. Okay. So we've got the two graphs here for the two schools, Ysgol Bron Isa and Ysgol Caerwen, and the sort of the very dark one, and the black here represents the cycle. The grey shade represents would like to cycle, and then the others then we've got here. Okay, so when you reread the question 1, it says which school and year group has an approximate equal split between the three categories: pupils who cycle to school, pupils who would like to cycle to school, and other pupils. So if we look here at the percentages, well, we could see if we look at this split, for instance, here, well, you can see it's much larger in terms of the others here, yeah. Whereas if you look at this one, for instance, here, it's much smaller, isn't it, in terms of who cycle, okay, and these are pretty equal. But where they're all equal is, I'd say, this last one here, isn't it? Okay, so those bars there, in terms of the percentage that's shaded for each of them, it's pretty much identical. So we'll say the school there will be Ysgol Caerwen, okay, and of course that would be year 10, okay. Alright, so that would make sense there. Then we've got true or false situation. So it says then, we're going to use our bars to help us on this. There are definitely more pupils in Ysgol Bron Isa who cycle to school than in Ysgol Caerwen. So we're comparing the ones who cycle, which remember now is the black, yeah? And it's saying there's definitely more in Bron Isa than there are in Caerwen. Now you might think that because the amount of black that's been shaded here is much more, yeah, than it is in Caerwen. So you might think that, yeah, that's true, definitely true, because there's more here shaded. But remember, these represent percentages, okay? Percentages are not amounts of pupils. They just represent the percentage or the proportion of the year group. So for instance, in year 8 here, 60% of year 8 cycle, okay? But, you know, Ysgol Bron Isa could be a very small school. It could be the one that's really small. So 60% of the year group might not be very much, you know? Okay? Whereas Ysgol Caerwen could be a very, very big school. Okay? So even though only 20% go cycle, right? 20% of the amount of pupils that might be in year 8 could actually be bigger than the 60% here. Okay? So remember, percentages don't represent amounts. Okay? So we have to circle false there, all right, in that case then, because it's not definitely, it could be, but it's not definitely. Both schools have pupils in each year group with no interest in cycling to school. Well, let's have a look. Yeah, I agree, because if you think about it here, no interest, that would be others, wouldn't it, yeah? There's white on every bar, yeah, in that case there, so I agree, okay? That would be true in that case there, right? Both schools in each year group have that situation. The questions asked were biased. Well, let's look at the questions up here. Do you cycle to school? And if you answered no, would you like to cycle to school? I don't think there's anything biased there at all, right? There's nothing there. It's a straightforward question. There's nothing wrong with asking that question. It's not leading, you know. It's not saying, you know, it's not saying if you answered no, do you know, it's not as if it's saying, do you agree that cycling is good or something like that. It's not leading you to say yes, right? It's just asking a straightforward question. Would you like to, yes or no? And do you cycle to school is perfectly fine to ask that. So it's not like leading anyway, it's not biased. So I'd say that's false. Approximately 20% of the pupils surveyed in Ysgol Caerwen cycle to school. So 20% Ysgol Caerwen is Caerwen then, and 20% of them cycle is black, remember, and you look, 20% exactly there, 20% exactly there. Well, that's a little under 20%, it's not far away though, and that's a bit over. So 20% of the whole cohort, the whole year 7, 8, and 9, and 10? Yeah, but if you put them all together, probably, you know, there's a little less in year 9, but there's more in year 10. So they probably balance out to be 20%. So yeah, I agree with that. And then it is more likely that it is Ysgol Ffron Isa, that is the small school situated in town. So it's more likely that this is the small school. I actually agree, because even though the percentages, remember now percentages don't represent amounts, but the percentages here represent the proportion, yeah, of those that cycle. And you can see, yeah, a lot of pupils in this school cycle. So if that's the case, it probably is the small school. Remember, the small school was the one that had all these traffic-free cycle routes. So if you've got traffic-free cycle routes, obviously people are cycling and so on. So yeah, I agree, that would be true. Okay, so part B, in January 2011, there were 1,200 miles of National Cycle Network routes in Wales. In January 2016, there were 1,400 miles of routes in Wales. If the number of miles of routes in Wales were to continue to increase by the same number of miles per year, how many miles of cycle routes would there be in 2018? Well, let's think. That gap there is 5 years, isn't it? 5 years, from 2011 to 2016, and it increased by 200. So in 5 years, it increased by 200 miles. Yeah, I know it's 200 miles because 1,400 take away 1,200 is 200. So, you know, if it was increasing by the same amount each year, 200 miles over 5 years would be, let's see how many that would be a year. 200 divided by 5, and if you work that out, you get 40 miles. 40 miles per year. So if that's the case, remember now 2016 was 1,400 miles. In 2017, then it would be 1,440 miles. But in 2018, then it would be 1,480 miles. Okay, so that's the sort of answer we'd be looking for. And in part 2, then, it says, why is your answer in 1 unlikely to be an accurate estimate of the number of miles of routes in Wales in January 2018? Why is it unlikely to be true? Well, it's not necessarily going to increase at this constant rate that we see here. Okay, that's not necessarily going to happen, isn't it, in everyday life, in real life. Okay, things could happen whereby it doesn't increase by, keeps on increasing by 40 each time. So we could say that, right? It may not continue to increase at a constant rate. Okay, in other words, you know, the number of miles may be different. Okay, over the next 2 years.